From the east coast of the Vale, the fingers reach out into the narrow sea. 4 rocky peninsulas plagued by wind and rain, and barren to all but the hardiest of weeds. The ancestral home of House Baelish. Our house began with my great-grandfather, a Bravosi sellsword who came to the Vale at the invitation of House Corbray. My grandfather raised himself to the status of hedge knight, and even managed to acquire a bit of land and a keep on the smallest of the fingers, though I do believe he often missed sleeping under his titular hedges. The only thing worse than owning a dreary and desolate land is owning only a small portion of it. Luckily, I didn't spend much time there as a child. During the War of the Ninepenny Kings, a cheap name for a cheap cause, where other men fought for the king my father fought to befriend Hoster Tully, Lord Paramount of the Trident and head of one of the oldest and greatest houses in Westeros. Thanks to my father's heroic efforts, Lord Hoster agreed to foster me at Riverrun with his own children. Until then, my whole world had been a small tower on the gull-stained rocks of the Fingers. But when I first saw the stone walls of Riverrun rising from the Trident, towering over me, back then I was a little more easily impressed. The boy in me thought the gods themselves must live in such a place. I soon learned otherwise. Lord Tully's son, Edmure, was quick to ensure I would never forget myself in their house. He nicknamed me Littlefinger, after my size and homeland, and the name was just cruel enough to stick. His sisters, Lysa and Catelyn, made me a pawn in their kissing game, traded back and forth between them for practice. Needless to say, I enjoyed spending time with them more than Edmure. As we grew older, the game began to change, as all games do. Lysa grew more bold, and Cat more demure. When Lord Tully announced Cat's betrothal to a brute from the north whom she'd never met, I realized her duty would outweigh any feelings she had for me. Fool that I was, I challenged this Brandon Stark to a duel for her hand. He was a warrior, I was a boy. If Cat had not intervened, he would have killed me and laughed over my corpse. For my insolence, Lord Tully banished me from Riverrun. No matter. I had learned everything I needed by then. I would fight my battles not with swords, but with wits. A few men could match me. Even then, House Baelish might have died out on the rocks of the Fingers. I was again a poor lord, with no allies and no prospects, except, if I were lucky, the daughter of a middling merchant. Then, opportunity arose. The Mad King executed that Brandon Stark and incited a rebellion. My old friend, Lysa Tully, was married off to John Arryn, Lord of the Vale, to cement the alliance against the Iron Throne, bringing her within my circle again. I quickly capitalized on our former affection and persuaded her to have me appointed as controller of customs at Gulltown, the Vale's greatest port. Wars burn gold like wildfire. When I increased the port's income tenfold, her husband took notice of this lowly lord from the Fingers, and when the new and profligate King Robert needed a master of coin who could find gold where no one else could, why, Lord Arryn knew just the man. Once, House Baelish had no lands, no name, and no gold. Now we have quite a lot of each. What new rung will the next generation climb? Let us not be hasty. I'm not finished yet.
Like the Starks, the blood of House Bolton runs back to the first men. Singers call those times the Age of Heroes. A mask for a savage world that bred savage men. The Lannisters swindled their enemies, the Storm Kings hammered them, and the Starks cut off their heads. In such company as this, were the Boltons really so indelicate? Unlike some other houses, my ancestors owned the Bolton words, "Our blades are sharp." They passed down not a Valyrian greatsword, but a knife, honed and thin enough to fit between the topmost layer of skin and the tissue below, and peel. For as we all learned as children, a naked man has few secrets, a flayed man none. In those dark days, they say that some of my more willful forebearers would even wear their enemies' skins as cloaks. But no such tokens remain, if they ever existed. Certainly not hanging in some secret room in the Dreadfort, as old wives and fools insist. I suspect my house itself was responsible for spreading such rumors in the first place. Few weapons are as effective as terror, and this was an age of war. House against house, brother against brother. The Iron Men were on the rise, and never far from our shores. We must have seemed ripe for the taking, too busy fighting each other to deal with the raiders as they deserved. Thus the Starks took it upon themselves to unify the North, under them. They drove the pirates out of White Knife and claimed the eastern coast, and married the Marsh King's daughter for the neck. The Stark wrestled for Bear Island and won. Or so they say. Silly stories. Blood and Steel won the North, and the Starks had the most of both. After years of war, my ancestors gave up their barbaric practices and bent the knee to their new kings. Thus House Bolton became what we are today, loyal bannermen and staunch ally to the Starks, and the second greatest house in the North.
As a boy, even I dreamed sometimes of being not a Stark of Winterfell, but a Dane of Starfall. Legend has it that the Dornish founder of House Dane followed a falling star to where it hit the ground, and there he raised his castle. A fantastic story, I know, but House Dane has a relic to prove it. Dawn, the most famous sword in Westeros. Forged from the fallen star's cold heart, and as strong and sharp as Valyrian steel. Many houses have ancestral swords passed from father to eldest son, like my own family's Ice. But Dawn doesn't pass to the Lord of House Dane by right. To wield Dawn, a knight of their house must first be deemed worthy. It doesn't matter if he's the Lord, a younger brother, or a distant cousin. If none are found to be worthy, the blade stays on the mantle in Starfall until the next generation. But Dawn hasn't rested there often. From House Dane have risen some of the greatest warriors in Westeros. Vorian Dane, who was a king and the greatest knight in Dawn before he was defeated by Nymeria. Because of his honor and his prowess, she sent him to the wall in golden fetters and took his heir as her husband. Joffrey Dane, who answered Aegon the Conqueror's demand to submit by invading Aegon's 7 kingdoms and marching an army to the gates of Old Town, where Aegon had been crowned. And the greatest of them all, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning. During the reign of the Mad King, a band of outlaws calling themselves the Kingswood Brotherhood terrorized the forest outside of King's Landing. Every force sent after them either returned empty-handed or vanished into the woods, never to be seen again. The king was furious and dispatched Sir Arthur of his own Kingsguard to deal with the threat. Sir Arthur didn't put the villagers to the question or set fire to the woods to smoke out the Brotherhood, as other forces had done. He paid the small folk for the food his men ate, brought their grievances to the king, even won them the right to take a few of the king's deer during the autumn. The forest folk had looked to the outlaws to defend them, but Sir Arthur did more for them than the outlaws could ever hope to do. When a villager led Sir Arthur and his knights to the outlaws' secret camp, the Brotherhood, to their credit, didn't flee. One of their leaders, the Smiling Knight, was a madman. Cruelty and honor jumbled together. But he didn't know fear, not even when Sir Arthur drew Dawn before him. Soon the outlaw's longsword had so many notches that Sir Arthur stopped to let him fetch a new one. The robber knight chose another and then asked for Dawn. Sir Arthur replied, "Then you shall have it." The Smiling Knight never smiled again. The mad fool. Dawn is just a sword. Sir Arthur was the true steel. Strong, brave, and loyal to a fault. He would never have aided Rhaegar's abduction of my sister if his vows hadn't compelled him. And though we fought on opposite sides, I admired him. When I was younger, I wanted to be him. Every boy did. And I killed him. Not in single combat, but as he was on his knees, a dagger in his back. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He wasn't angry or betrayed. He'd done his duty to the last, even though he found it dishonorable, and even though he knew what awaited me in that tower. Sir Arthur Dane died the greatest knight who ever lived. After Robert's coronation, I returned Dawn to Starfall. One day, House Dane will raise a worthy successor to Sir Arthur. Until then, Dawn gathers dust above the fire, with the dream of every boy in Westeros.
Some houses rise to power through strength, others through wealth. House Frey gained its title through cunning. Centuries ago, its founder looked at a map and noticed how the trident spears the neck, cutting off the north from the south. He realized that a river of gold would flow to the man who owned the right bridge across the water. It took the Freys 3 generations to complete their forefathers' vision. A massive arch of smooth grey rock, wide enough for 2 wagons to pass abreast. When they were done, they built high curtain walls, deep moats, and heavy gates to protect the approaches, and put up squat, ugly, formidable keeps on either bank. The Twins, commanding both road and river with arrow slits, murder holes, and portcullises. The Twins ensure that no one crosses without begging the Freys' leave and paying the Freys' toll. The plan worked. The family grew rich and powerful, exacting gold from lords, merchants, and poor farmers. A good thing too, given the number of Freys the bridge has to support. The current lord, Walder Frey, has seen over 90 name days and sired near as many children, true-born or otherwise. A shameful thing in any other lord, but Walder Frey possesses no shame. A dangerous thing for any other lord, but Walder Frey has no concern for heirs or fear of their impatience. Perhaps Lord Frey thinks to outlast them all. Given the infighting he encourages among them, perhaps he will. Whatever the case, House Frey does nothing so well as survive. When the Ironborn conquered and razed the Riverlands, the Freys hid in their castle. When Aegon and House Tully swept the Ironborn back to their islands, the Freys hid in their castle. When my ancestor demanded their allegiance as Aegon's new Lord Paramount of the Trident, the Freys bent the knee from their castle. Perhaps then we should not have been surprised when my father, Lord Hoster Tully, called his banners against the Mad King, and Lord Walder didn't answer. The Baratheons, Starks, Aarons, and Tullys, some of the oldest and greatest houses of Westeros, fought and bled for the cause of justice, while House Frey hid in its castle and waited. No doubt if Rhaegar had won at the Trident, Lord Walder would have given him safe passage into the north, to destroy the rest of my husband's northern army for a fair price. But Rhaegar fell, and lo and behold, the Frey army appeared to render aid to our already victorious forces. Many sniggered that Lord Walder had been waiting for his army to come of age, having fielded it out of his own breeches. My own father named him the late Lord Frey, to the other lords' amusement. A slight that pricks Lord Walder to this day. In many ways, however, Lord Walder was wise. We had no guarantee of victory, and had he fought with us from the outset and we failed, he would have lost the bridge his family was so proud of. More pride than honor. Those should be the words of House Frey. Yet part of me wonders if Lord Walder waited not out of fear, but hope. That we would be destroyed, leaving him to assume my family's place as Lord Paramount of the Trident. To buy the respect they've always wanted, but refused to earn. No. Not even Lord Walder could be so disloyal.
Most houses take wild beasts for their sigils, calling themselves bears, lions, or stags, as if a cloth banner could make them so. That isn't the way of House Tarly. Our sigil is the huntsman pulling his bow, and it isn't some idle fancy. As soon as a son of House Tarly can hold a spoon, he gets a bow. As soon as the boy can sit a horse, his father takes him on a hunt. They return with a stag, a buck, a boar, a brace of pheasant, even if it takes days. Even if it takes a week. Even if it takes the boy's whole life. Horn Hill is ours. A fitting home for one of the oldest and most honorable families of the Reach. Legend has it that Harlan the Hunter and Herndon of the Horn, two sons of Garth the Greenhand, raised the castle in the Age of Heroes, and shared a home and a wife for 100 years. Most of the great houses spout such nonsense about their origins. At least my family doesn't claim some long-lost ancient crown like the rest of them. House Tarly breeds soldiers, not kings. When House Gardner ruled the Reach, we served them well and loyally. When House Gardner died, and Aegon gave the Reach to their stewards, the Tyrells, we served them well and loyally. We know our place, even if the Tyrell women don't. When Aegon's son faced rebellion from the Vulture King of Dawn, my ancestor, Savage Sam Tarly, led the royal forces on a vulture hunt. Heartsbane, our ancestral Valyrian sword and the pride of our house, soon ran red from point to hilt with rebel blood. When Robert Baratheon rebelled against Aerys, I led the Tyrell van and handed him his only defeat in the war at Ashford. But a hunter knows that a moment's slip can cost him the game. Great houses have fallen from a single weak heir. Samwell looked like a son when he was born, but he grew up plump and soft as a daughter. I'd catch him in the kitchen shoving cakes into his ever-growing mouth, or reading in the garden when he was supposed to be training. I brought masters at arms from all over Westeros to make a man of him. He slept in chainmail, bathed in bull's blood, was dressed in his mother's clothes and paraded through the castle to shame him into valor. He only grew fatter and more craven. I despaired of the future of our house until my wife gave me another boy, Dickon, a real son and worthy heir. Or he would have been, if Sam wasn't squatting in his way. One morning I had Sam brought into the woods outside the castle. I told him he'd given me no cause to disown him, but Heartsbane should go to a man strong enough to wield her. And Sam wasn't worthy to touch her hilt. Either he would take the black and renounce all claim to his brother's sword and title, or I would hunt him down like the pig he was. Of course, faced with danger and exertion, he chose the coward's path and waddled north to the wall. Some may call me cruel for what I did, but I don't care. I am responsible for House Tarly, as my father was before me and his father before him. If the hunter returns with empty hands, his family starves. If the warrior carries an empty scabbard, his home burns. House Tarly has stood for thousands of years. It will not fall on my watch. No matter how many tears my family sheds.
Honor, glory, lies to make idiot boys want knighthood, and idiot girls spread their legs for it. Let me tell you what makes a knight. Killing. Either enough men, or the right man. House Clegane should know. We're very good at both. Most families claim some great ancestor so far back that nobody can prove them liars. Not us. My grandfather kept the kennel for Lord Titus Lannister of Casterly Rock, the father of Lord Tywin. Lord Titus was a weak man who didn't know it. One day while hunting, he stumbled on a lioness. Instead of embracing the man who wore her on his banners, she tried to tear out his throat. Lucky my grandfather came up with the dogs and drove the big cat away. As a reward, the Cleganes got lands and a keep and a son to squire for the Lannisters. We took the 3 hounds who died for them as our new sigil. When Tywin Lannister became Lord of Casterly Rock, he wanted more from his former kennel master than fealty. He bet that training hounds to kill isn't far from training boys to kill. In just 2 generations, my brother Gregor and I proved him right. I gutted my first man at 12. Years after, servants started disappearing in our keep, and even a sister I don't remember. But nobody could prove anything against Gregor, or dared if they caught him at it. For my father wanted a knight in our family, and thought he'd found one in Gregor, who at 13 towered over enough men that they called him the Mountain. Sure, Gregor looks quite the champion from a distance, but a mountain can't cleave a man in half with one blow, and won't break a wench's face if she talks. Through Lord Tywin's influence, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen kindly anointed my brother personally. A great honor for our family, everyone said. 1 year later, Sir Gregor chivalrously sacked the prince's city, brained the prince's baby, and raped and murdered the prince's wife, winning our family yet more honor from the new king and queen. Soon after, my father died. They say in a hunting accident. The same day that Gregor became lord of the Clegane lands, gold and anything under his roof, I left our home to take service at Casterly Rock. Lord Tywin is not like his father. Neither is King Joffrey, or the likes of me would never be on the King's Guard, with all those true knights. Between them, a man who serves the Lannisters will never lack for killing. I'll guard this king, such as he is. Gregor will kill the other ones, such as he does. When we're done, we'll see how many people still believe in songs and fairy tales.
Mudmen, bog devils. Those are just the most pleasant names our fellow northerners have for us, the Crannogmen who live in the swamps of the Neck. Because we do not live in castles like them, because we do not farm like them, because we are not tall or rich like them. But through our veins flows the same blood of the first men, and, at times, maybe something more. We still live much as they did, on floating islands in houses of thatch and woven reeds. We fish, hunt, and tell our children of our heroes. The knight of the laughing tree who fought in the year of the false spring. The last Marsh king who challenged the Starks and lost his crown and his daughter. And other stories, older still, since lost to the world. The Neck was not always a swamp. In the Dawn Age, it was as dry and fertile as the rest of the north. But during the war with the First Men, the children of the forest brought down the hammer of waters on the Neck, trying to break Westeros in two. When the waters finally receded, they left the bogs and swamps we know today. Many of the First Men decided to fight on, but my ancestors wisely chose to heed the children's power and advance no farther. They beat their swords into frog spears and fish hooks, and settled a land forever devastated by the folly of war. Unlike the rest of Westeros, we keep no garrisons and raise no soldiers for petty spats with our neighbors. Our land protects its own. An outsider will find in the Neck an endless morass of suckholes, quicksands, and green grass that looks solid to the unwary eye, but turns to water the instant you tread on it. If you're lucky enough to be armored, you'll only drown inside your own steel. If you're not, you get to meet what swims in that water. Serpents and monstrous lizard lions with teeth like daggers and never enough to eat. Don't worry, only your horse will live long enough to feel their poisons burning through it. If you somehow survive all this, you may find that a well-placed dart can be as deadly as any blade. Not that you'll see us blowing it your way. Since the fall of the last Marsh King, House Reed has ruled the Neck beneath the banner of a black lizard lion on a grey-green field. We are not wealthy, powerful, or known even to our own countrymen. Our home, Greywater Watch, is no castle you've ever seen. And seeing it once does not mean you'll ever find it again. For Greywater Watch moves. Many would-be conquerors have died trying to find us. With war all around and our Stark Lord besieged on all sides, many more will doubtless soon try. They will look at us on a map and see a stranglehold for the north. And they will forget that the sea itself once entered the Neck, and not all of it returned.